Okie dokie. Good afternoon, radical people. Welcome to the final of 3 radical talk sessions, which have been designed to mark the week of National Inclusion Week celebrations. I am Emma. I'm the co-founder of Be Radical, along with my colleagues Kirsty and Holly, who are actually on the call today. Say hello, gals.
Hey.
Hello.
I am joined by an esteemed panel, not a panel of radical guests and allies who I will ask to introduce themselves very shortly, who are going to share their insights and experiences to help you, our delegates, to understand the challenges that disabled folks face when entering into recruitment processes, and some of the ways that organisations like yours can reduce those challenges, reduce those barriers and blockers, create a fairer recruitment process, and in turn reap the benefits by recruiting disabled folk and diversifying your workplaces. So to start the call today, I just wanted to set the scene with a recent case study that's hit the news this week. In September 2023, an autistic man by the name of Chris Tyman was awarded £20,000 in compensation following a case of discrimination by the NHS Digital, which is a government agency responsible for NHS digital technology. So the background is pretty basic, really. Chris applied for a cybersecurity position with NHS Digital in August 2021. He requested reasonable adjustments for the job interview due to his struggles with communication, including a request to see the interview questions in advance, and for the panelists to avoid asking open-ended questions. NHS Digital rejected his request, arguing that all applicants had to be treated the same, which violated the Equality Act. In terms of the actions that were discriminating, NHS rejected the reasonable adjustments, including a skills assessment and providing the questions in advance. And then what happened was that Timon decided not to attend the interview due to NHS's unwillingness. Sorry, I'm really struggling to speak today. I will get there, to accommodate his needs. And he stated in an article that I read that he felt his needs were not generally committed to making by the NHS. And then when he applied for another position and faced similar problems with securing reasonable adjustments, he sort of terminated the relationship with the NHS. So after a 16-month legal battle and a conciliation process led by ACAS, a settlement was reached, and NHS England offered £20,000 as compensation for injury to feelings, though they didn't admit liability. So in terms of the outcomes for Chris, I guess that's okay, but I bet he would have appreciated the opportunity to participate in that recruitment process and potentially win the job on merit had he been enabled to through the provision of reasonable adjustments. In the UK, disabled people face disproportionately high unemployment rates, with a rate of 11.6% among disabled people compared to 5.8% for non-disabled people. That's a stat that I pulled from the Office for National Statistics. I think also interesting to understand is that only 72.2% of disabled staff report having all necessary adjustments in 2021. And there's been a rise in harassment and bullying cases compared to non-disabled staff. So this is, I think I've chosen this case study because it's really relevant. It's hit the news this week, but it also helps us to understand the challenges that disabled people are facing when trying to, get into the labour market, and the things that organisations should probably be paying more attention to. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce the panel. Kirsty, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us who you are and what it is that you do at Be Radical, please?
Certainly. Hello, everybody. My name's Kirsty Palmer. I am co-founder at Be Radical, and I am responsible for the day-to-day operations at our wonderful charity, Radical Recruit.
Beautiful. Thanks. Marie, I'm going to throw to you, mate.
Maria? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Sorry, just a caveat. I am half deaf, so in one ear I'm not. That's one of my disabilities. So I'm Maria Alexandru. I'm a Radical alumna. So I have a job in the NCA, in the civil service. I have been a Radical for about 2 years before I got my job, I believe. I met Emma and the wonderful Radical team in about 2020 when I really, really, really needed a lot of support. And I've also become a disability campaigner and advocate over time. So I've sat on panels and supported several spaces, whether it's regards to disability or a woman with a disability. And any questions, I'm here to support.
Thank you very much, Maria. Michael, I'm going to wedge you in between the women on the call. You're a bit outnumbered today. Welcome. Thanks for joining the call.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having us. So my name is Michael Halban, and I am the head of marketing at the organisation Recite Me. We specialise in online accessibility software to help people have a more customised user experience. And as we discussed, we can talk about what that looks like in regards to recruitment. Personally, I'm dyslexic myself, so I'm surely I can share some lived experiences from my life at school and through my early days of trying to get jobs at PC World, and also be able to tell you guys around our founder Ross's story that's also close to myself and being dyslexic also. So I'm looking forward to chatting today. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And cheers for joining us. The gorgeous Maddie, you're up next. You're actually filling in for one of our associate consultants, Liz, who's got the dreaded lurgy. Maddie, who are you? What do you do? Give your business a shout out.
Hi, so my name is Maddie. I am also coming on board as an associate consultant for Be Radical, which is very exciting. And I am also a consultant for inclusion and also a trainer for inclusion as well. I've recently launched a business called Simplicity Works because it really is simple. We've just got to be consistent. And it's about making sure that managers are appropriately trained and you have appropriate awareness in your organisation to ensure that we're embedding the foundation blocks for inclusion and retaining diversity. So that's me. My name's Maddie. You might see my cat pop up a couple of times because she's being expressly needy today. So please ignore me if I have to shoo her off the desk.
Beautiful. Well, welcome to you, Maddie. Thank you for filling in, and welcome to your cat, should she make a cameo. Last but not least, my lovely friend and business partner, Holly.
Hey, thanks, yeah, hi everyone, I'm Holly. I'm one of the co-founders at Be Radical. Like Maria, I actually started as a Radical candidate. Prior to that, I was a Radical volunteer, so I've been right through every single role or stakeholder group that you could possibly be in as part of the Radical Village. So I'm now one of the co-founders of Be Radical, and I head up all of our recruitment and employer branding. So any recruitment services that we offer to clients, but also any employer branding guidance and support. And I'll probably talk to you a little bit more about sort of how that impacts the recruitment process later on. Yeah, that's what I do. I'll hand back to you.
Thanks very much, Holly. So we are here to unapologetically plug our newly launched this week service called Accelerating Accessibility. And Maria, you actually named our service. Our colleague, Kirsty, who's on the call, really struggles with the name, especially after a gin and tonic, which makes us love it even more, really. Can you share the inspiration behind the name, Maria?
Yeah, so basically, I feel that when it comes to accessibility as a word, I feel that I don't want companies to feel like deer in headlights when they want to employ people with disabilities. And I also don't want companies to feel like it's a corporate social responsibility type of tick box exercise. It can be quite stressful when an organization and the management of an organization or the HR of an organization can be quite stressed when they don't have the right knowledge and backup and support, and Be Radical is there to give that support in time to accelerate the process. So not only does it sound really jazzy, like accelerating access, especially in the way that I just said it, but also it does what it says on the tin. So you're trying to accelerate the accessibility for people with disabilities. Too often we use the word disability, which puts the barrier on the disability or the person, rather than the word access, which puts the barrier on the employer. I'm not trying to be unfair to employers. I'm just trying to communicate the fact that if you look at the social model of disability, it's defined as barriers are not created by the disability, but by social constructs. And that also can include employers. And it might not be on purpose, although I've had some experiences of that happening. It might just be the fear because of lack of knowledge and experience and support by a company like Be Radical. And that's how I came up with it. And I hope it continues to be something that the team are okay with and happy with.
Well, we sort of shorten it to AA once we've introduced the name in full, which is a little bit funny as well, I guess. But we love it. We think you're brilliant. It absolutely works on all the levels. And I agree with you. The world wasn't designed for people with disabilities, and often it's our environments and the people within them, the lack of knowledge and empathy that they possess, that creates the biggest barriers for disabled folk. And certainly that's what our radicals tell us. In terms of our radicals, they were involved in the consultation process that drove the development of the AA service. Kirsty, what were the key messages that came out of that piece of work, and how did they shape sort of the product and the service that we're taking to market this week?
Yeah, so we consulted our disabled radicals and our employers. And Maria joined the process and gave some great input. I think one of the key messages was that disabled people have been burnt so many times at the hands of employers, and really lack the confidence to employ for a job if they're not made to feel welcome from the start. So we've designed accelerating accessibility around that, and offer consultancy to help businesses make their recruitment processes accessible and welcoming from the start. One of the other barriers that was identified is this huge, great big long wait for the government's access to work scheme. So at the moment, we think it's 6 months plus just to get the assessment. And that's really setting disabled people up to fail. So we are really proud to be able to offer workplace needs assessments, and we can turn that around within 10 days. And that means that disabled people can get off to a good start because they know the equipment and support they need to do their job. And then another barrier that disabled people were facing was that 1 in 8 people wait over a year for their reasonable adjustments to be implemented. You get your report identifies the equipment and support that you need. Quite often employers struggle to go and get that equipment and support because there's all sorts of barriers in the path. The equipment lands on the desk and then it's passed around like a hot potato because nobody wants to take responsibility for it. So we offer consultancy to businesses to enable them to implement reasonable adjustments really swiftly and quickly, so that disabled people can thrive, get off to the best start, and really do well in their chosen careers.
Yeah, and certainly we offer that same consultancy service to employers who are interviewing disabled candidates, isn't that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reasonable adjustment starts from the very, very beginning of the process. And so that's why we're offering the consultancy, really, because if you don't get that recruitment process right, you're not going to be benefiting from disabled talent within your business.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, mate. So Disability Rights UK published some data not long ago that confirms that only 51% or 51.8% of disabled people are in employment compared to 81.1% of non-disabled people here in the UK. Maria, from your perspective as a person with a disability, what can businesses do to make you feel welcome, and why is it so important?
I'm not asking for companies to roll out the red carpet just because, you know, I've got a sign on a piece of paper that says this person has a disability. All I'm asking for is equity. So more often we use the word equality. And the Equality Act, the Disability Equality Act exists as well. But I think a more important word is equity, because at the end of the day, for me to be able to do the same job as someone else, even if I'm maybe have a talent for it that is slightly more than the next person, which is a natural talent, maybe physically there's something that I need, and if it's not given to me, I'm not able to do that. So I think for me to be able to feel more welcome, one is showing that you're interested in taking someone with a disability. I've had phone calls where they say, well, you know, according to the Disability Equality Act, of course we would accept. But for me, that didn't build any trust, because at the end of the day, everyone can say that. And then the result could be I went to the interview and the answer is someone else was better than me. And there's no proof for me to prove otherwise that that's not the case. By the way, just to mention that I have tested this 2 to 3 times in my life. And it's been proven that actually I was the best candidate. But I didn't do it to cause a problem to the company. I just wanted to prove to myself that actually genuinely there are situations where people, they just don't want to take you. And it is your disability, it's not because you're less qualified or less capable for the job. So I really feel that there must be a genuine interest, a genuine conversation. And I think when you have companies like Radical Recruit, who have a program like Be Radical, that sets you up for success, to know where your company needs to be so that you can offer that. But also, in my experience on the Radical Recruit side, as a radical, I found that the charity has had the conversations for me. It's a bit like having a health passport, where the conversation of the disability is over and out of the way. It's already written on there with all of my requirements, and then I can just concentrate on being me, with my capabilities, with my soft skills, my hard skills, and everything that you see on my CV, which is more relevant to you than anything else. And I feel it's just the aspect of like being very open, honest, because if you don't want to take someone, I know this sounds really strange to say, just make a point of just telling me. I know that sounds quite bad. I'm not going to all of a sudden go and get up and get the Disability Act and take you to court just because you say you don't want someone like me. Don't waste my time, basically. That's the type of thing that I prefer. If you don't want to take a person with a disability, be honest with yourselves, be honest with me, let me move on, so that because one fact is that disabled people have to apply for 60% more jobs than a non-disabled person, and we have half the energy of a non-disabled person. So you can imagine how much longer it takes us to do the job. And if you're here listening to Be Radical, that means that you are interested in taking the program forward, in doing what is right for you to be set up for success, to accelerate our access as disabled people in your firm.
Ooh, some bold calls to action there. I love the way you move, Maria. I wanted to just go back to your point around equity and equality, because I think it is such a key consideration for businesses. And I'm going to offer you an analogy. So everyone imagine a fruit orchard with different types of trees. You've got 3 types of trees: apple trees, orange trees, and banana trees. And each tree represents a job applicant with their unique, skills, abilities, and needs. So in this analogy, equality in recruitment is treating everyone equally, meaning each tree gets the same amount of water, for example. So while this might seem fair on the surface, it doesn't consider that the different trees have different water requirements. So the apple tree, in this instance, may thrive with the amount of water administered, but banana trees might wither and die, and orange trees might get flooded. This approach overlooks the individual needs and potential of each type of tree. Equity in recruitment, on the other hand, involves giving each tree the specific amount of water it needs to thrive. So apple trees receive enough, banana trees receive less because they need less, and orange trees receive a little bit more because they need more. This ensures that all trees have the opportunity to grow and produce fruit to their full potential. In recruitment, equity means providing reasonable adjustments and accommodations tailored to the candidate's unique circumstances, ensuring a level playing field for all. And when you're faced with the situation where a candidate says, this is what I need to start at the same place as every other candidate from the mainstream, you have a legal mandate to provide that reasonable adjustment. And if we go back to the case of the NHS example I gave earlier, employers are not getting it right. So from your experience, this is going to go around the panel, I think. What are the key stumbling blocks or barriers or challenges for disabled folks when they're trying to navigate through recruitment processes? Holly, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I think I don't have a disability, so I've not firsthand had to go through this, but from speaking with candidates that we support, the first thing is knowing when to have that conversation and who to have it with. So quite often when you are applying for a role, and I was working with a young person we were supporting recently who is autistic, and a fantastic candidate. He had got to interview stage and they had provided him with a task to do. And he hadn't disclosed the fact that he was autistic because he had previously found that disclosing it had not helped. He disclosed it in previous employment and had then found that he was treated differently. And I think, Maddie, you touched on how you're often treated differently after disclosure yesterday. But because of this, he had not disclosed. And he came to me, he said, I've been given a task to do, but the task they've given me isn't clear enough. You know, I feel like they've not given me enough information for me to do this task properly. And I said, well, have you considered going back and explaining to them that, you know, look, I think I can do this task really well, but I am autistic and you've not given me enough information here for me to feel like I am informed enough to do this well. Yeah. And we had a bit of a back and forth about the fact that he, you know, perhaps didn't want to have that conversation. He didn't know how it would be perceived. And eventually I helped him to craft an email so that he could get that across to them. And luckily in this instance, they were fantastic. They were like, absolutely, we'll go away. We'll build it out for you a bit better. Let us know if there's anything specific. But I think that's one of the key things I've noticed. It's knowing, when do we have that conversation? When is it the right time? And who is it that I disclose that to? Because in the same breath as wanting to disclose that during the process, there should be some division between the person that it's disclosed to and the person that's making the hiring decision, I believe. So yes, HR should probably have the information if somebody has a particular reasonable adjustment, but you don't want that to impact on the hiring decision by the manager. You don't want them to think, oh, okay, because they need this reasonable adjustment, it might impact their ability to do the job if actually they've outperformed everyone else. So I think that's a massive stumbling block, is, not enough signposting around, we're an employer that welcomes candidates with a disability. We would like to encourage applications from candidates with a disability. If you would like to have a conversation about reasonable adjustments, here's the signposting, here's the process, here's the people you can talk to, here's the points that you can disclose it, to really make people feel comfortable and welcome in that process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from an employer branding perspective, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? And will only ever result in a more diverse pipeline of talent coming through and applying for the jobs.
Yeah.
Maria, can I throw this question over to you, please, as well?
Yeah, I think it all falls on the shoulder of the person with a disability in terms of trust. So pre-interview, I have found for over a decade, especially when disability and equality wasn't a big thing, let's just say, that everyone would say we're happy to accept applications from people with disabilities. And I think for me specifically, which is why I found Radical Recruit to be fair, this is honest, the only recruitment space that has been able to fix this problem has been basically, how do I know that you're authentic? How do I know that you're true? How do I know that you're genuine? You can tell me till the cows come in that you'll accept me, but at the end of the day, how many times have I taken that, gone with it, been really proud, and I don't lack confidence. I'm the type of person that goes head on, but then your confidence gets hit when you realize that actually maybe they're not truly genuine. So I know that when I come to Radical Recruit, the firms that are under Radical Recruit have been vetted and the conversations have been had. On Holly's aspect of like, when do you disclose? I've had situations where I've disclosed and I've been listening to crickets. I've had situations where I haven't disclosed, got the jobs immediately, but then when I had a problem, they were problematic to me, because as people with disabilities, you have to be in a company for 2 years, a lawyer told me, so that you can have any rights. I don't know if that's changed, but we're talking about a certain level of rights, not basic rights. So it gets to the point that you're like, well, neither is good for me. Whereas Radical Recruit will have the conversations, and on their roster, the companies are genuine, because if they're not, you're going to have backlash from Emma. So that has been the biggest problem that I've had, like finding the genuine ones. And then when I get there, am I trained enough? I haven't had enough practice for my interview skills. I haven't had the energy or the confidence to be able to do it. So the other side of Radical has been to support me with workshops, with interviews, to be able to get the interview stage correctly, to highlight my skills without being worried about, is my disability going to show? Is it going to be a problem? Are they going to assume that I'm not good because of my disability? I don't want that to be the case. So I have found those barriers to be the most difficult, to be fair.
Thank you very much, Maria. Very eloquent. Thank you. Maddie, I want to throw to you, final contributor for this question, please, mate. Barriers and blockers.
Yeah, so I identify so much with what Maria's just said, sort of having that little line at the bottom that conveniently says that they welcome applications from everyone. And then it becomes abundantly clear that they would like to welcome applications from everyone, but they have no awareness, no training, they don't know how to do it, and it gets very messy very quickly. I don't want to add, so I don't want to say the same thing twice, but I mean, I definitely reiterate everything that Maria said. I've been in that situation where I have disclosed and there's been an absolute U-turn in my treatment of sort of, before I was easy to deal with, and then I became difficult to deal with just because I uttered the words, I have a disability. And actually nothing's changed. All that's changed is their awareness of my sort of the context of me. I used to very regularly, I'd wait until probation was passed and I had a written sheet of paper that said, you've passed probation, we really like all your skills. And then I'd say, I'm disabled, knowing that actually I had proof on a piece of paper, if they decided to retaliate, that they thought I was good until they found out there was something sort of, I'm going to say wrong in quotations for those of you that can't see me. In terms of the actual application process, the biggest stumbling blocks for me, and one of the things I see all the time, is in a recruitment ad when there is this massive laundry list of requests of what they want from the person, and most of them dictate a personality type. And that to me is waving a massive red flag that they are probably not somebody that I want to engage with. Because if you're sort of advertising for a role that's to do with data analytics or something, they often put things like must be a team player, brilliant at communication, must be happy to have drinks on a Friday, and like we go out for team lunches, or we're a real sort of happy-go-lucky party central office. And I think no that would be a nightmare for me. I'm not only because I have disabilities, which mean that I shouldn't be drinking anyway, but I'm also a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. And so for companies screaming and yelling about how they're party central, that's an immediate turn off. And it also says they're not being aware of individual needs. And so there's lots of little tricks. And it's one of the reasons that Radical do all of this work with your recruitment process, is because there's so many little bits of language that really scream, I'm not aware of what individuals actually need, and I'm not going to cater to them.
Yeah, thanks very much, Maddie. Sorry, I'm just moving because I've realised that my laptop's going to die and I don't have a cord. Apologies. So it's really interesting because we do a lot of work around EVP and helping organisations to think about their EVP through more radical lenses. And your point about like personality types and the way people consider perks and benefits really does vary. And someone who might be in a wheelchair, for example, might not be able to get into, the pub that the team have chosen to go to on a Friday night. Or it might be that you've got a neurodivergent human who is non-verbal, and connecting with colleagues isn't possible, or is significantly harder when you're standing face to face in a room that's quite busy and got loads of background noise. So these types of things are absolutely essential when you're crafting your marketing material and your job advertisements, to really think about through sort of lots of disabled lenses. All right, beautiful. So disabled individuals in the UK are more likely to experience multiple barriers in employment. You touched on that just now, Maddie. This includes inaccessible workplaces and a lack of flexible working, according to Equality and Human Rights Commission. In a survey by Leonard Cheshire, 46% of respondents who were disabled felt that their career progression was limited due to their disability. And we think that that reflects discrimination in the workplace. Businesses can create environments that are sort of accommodating and accessible by clearly communicating their commitment to diversity and inclusion, and then following up with action. We've worked with dozens of employers who are taking that positive action to include and engage with disabled job seekers, and we've placed hundreds of radicals with disabilities and neurodivergent conditions into the workplace. We've got a 92% in work sustainability rate. At 6 months in the charity. We know it's possible. But what else can businesses do to create an environment where you feel comfortable and confident to disclose a disability without fear of discrimination? Maria, I'm going to throw to you and plug in my laptop.
Okay, what else can they do? Well, we've touched upon a lot of aspects, like how the job advert is set up. We've talked about how to try and identify the correct firms, because don't forget, when I left a company when it was the pandemic 2020, I believe, who were discriminatory, and that's why I left. I was very, very sick because of the discrimination, and I stuck it out for 3 years. I can't believe I did that, but I was lacking confidence at the time, and I found Radical Recruit. I think the biggest problem for me was to identify the right places, and I wasn't going to go on Reed or Indeed or LinkedIn or anything like that to apply through the regular routes. I think one of the things that companies can do is identify the right recruitment places, a bit like Radical Recruit, for example, where they can highlight and put like a flashing light that says, hey, we are genuine, we are authentic, we are truthful, because I'm not going to find you on LinkedIn and Indeed and Read. You can try, but it's a bit of a mess and it's a free for all. So that's one of my highlights. Also doing the other side of Radical Recruit, which is the Be Radical, which is putting in place the programs that will test your environment to see at what level you genuinely are. Because don't forget, the disability accreditation for disability confidence exists, but I find it's a bit like the 2-tick scheme, which was the predecessor, where any Tom, Dick and Harry basically can get it. And I don't think that's fair. So you should really find a place that genuinely look at you. And you may think, oh my God, that's scary. As a company, do I really want someone to genuinely look at the nooks and crannies? Well, it's better to look at it now and to get it all smoothed out and sorted than to have a place like the disability accreditation for disability confidence, who they've got, they look at everything and then they say, yeah, you can have it, and they walk off. And are you genuinely in that position? So I find that authenticity is the number one thing, to be fair, for making sure that you can truthfully accept someone with a disability. I don't want to blow my horn here, but I'm going to be honest. I'm one of the most determined, strong-minded women that are out there. And I feel that the only thing that has put me back is the fact that I've had to disclose a disability and a lifelong health condition since birth, even though I got through a degree and I got a high grade, and I got my master's from Cass Business School, which is one of the top in the world. It has shown that when you have a disability, all of a sudden your top degrees are just a piece of paper. Is that really fair when you have a person like myself who can bring you creativity, because I'm a communications officer, creativity, interesting ideas, thinking outside the box. I mean, these are things that not every person can offer, and yet you're overlooking it because you haven't put the right things in place to accept a person who has a lifelong condition and is on dialysis and needs to work from home sometimes. And you've seen the pandemic has proven that flexible working and hybrid working is a very basic requirement, not for just me, but for people who are mothers, for people who are carers, for even a person that has no responsibilities and no requirements. Isn't it nice to be able to work from home so you lower your stress? Yeah. So I think these things need to be looked at very carefully. And I believe the number one thing I can say is be honest with yourselves. And if you're absolutely honest, you will see that something like the Accelerating Access Program is something that I believe is an affordable way for you to kind of jump on it and be one of the top companies that actually authentically flash that light at us, people with disabilities, and the best ones as well, people like me who are determined and capable, and all we need is an opportunity.
You've covered off so many really, really important points, but the one that really stands out for me is the huge or the collective resilience and determination and grit that disabled candidates and that just largely untapped pool of talent offer to employers. And I mean, we know that there are 3 characteristics that help businesses transition through really tricky periods or crises. That the buying power of disabled folk is enormous. So having disabled people in your team is going to ensure that you can be really agile and responsive to meet their needs. So there's obviously the human case for doing this, undoubtedly. If that's not compelling enough, maybe think about what it is that disabled people do and offer to businesses that will improve your bottom line. and will increase sort of customer spending from the disabled community. These are some suggestions. We're going to not have time for all of the questions panel, so I'm going to have to do a bit of sort of chopping and changing. Apologies in advance. Michael, you're filling in for Ross, who is the CEO and founder of Recite Me, and he has a really interesting story. So can I start there with you? And then I kind of want to know, why could your product, your service be a game changer in terms of the way businesses recruit and engage with disabled talent?
Of course, yeah, it's been fantastic listening to the first half of this conversation. I've been wanting to sort of jump in as well, but everyone's been in full flow. But I think before I get into Ross and Recite Me, which is really important, I think it all starts with education and understanding what that is, because a lot of people don't want to say the wrong thing, and then some people are just oblivious to what's going on in the world as well. So education at the front door when it comes to websites and recruitment, but also more importantly when it comes at a management level and how we interact on a day-to-day basis. Everyone works differently, and we can all, providing reasonable adjustments or different ways of working, can get the best out of people. And we mentioned about people with disabilities who are more loyal, more hardworking, more determined, and providing a path together as a communication will bring the best out of people. Myself, people on my team who have got neurodiverse conditions, that's what we do. We make sure we work together to get the best out of each other. And without communication and without being upfront and honest and not being scared to ask or allow someone to ask you a question, you'll never get the best out of someone. So sorry, I just wanted to add that in because there's some really good conversations there.
Please don't apologize. They're brilliant insights. Thank you.
So yes, Recite Me and Ross are our great founder. Ross is a lovely person, and what happened was when Ross, like a lot of us, go through school and can be peaks and troughs and we can hit barriers and reading out in class in English. I hated that. I'm sure Ross did also. And Ross finished university with an engineering degree and ended up working as a student union. And he was about to give a presentation, and someone essentially just called him out and asked him, was happy to have that communication and say, hey Ross, I think you should maybe get tested for dyslexia. Loads of common traits, X, Y, and Z. Ross subconsciously knew he'd struggled, but like us all 10, 15, 20 years ago, you work arounds and you copy words into Google and press play and understand what it actually says and things like that. And sure enough, Ross was dyslexic, and he was given some funding, some technology, and he was able to get support on that one machine at that one time when he needed it. But he moves away from that machine to a mobile device, to a library, and that support had gone. And then at that moment, it was like, well, why does the responsibility have to be with me to bring essentially my own ramp to my computer? Why is the organization not providing reasonable adjustments to help me online to be able to do it? A bit like the ramp analogy, if you like, in banks and restaurants that came in for reasonable adjustments in the Equality Act. And at this point, he was like, well, how do we create that support for someone naturally when it comes to online, absorbing content from everything we do in life now is obviously online. So from that moment, with a team, Ross created a suite of tools that lives on a website that enables people to use them when they want to, in a way that they want to make their experience unique to them. So for instance, like Ross for dyslexia, he likes a yellow background, black text. Myself, who's dyslexic, colours don't affect me, but I wouldn't mind a screen reader or some line height so I don't skip lines. Yeah. And it's all about that personalized experience. Obviously, I don't want to go into about how a website's built mechanically with WCAG and things. That's another conversation. This is just
you'll boggle my mind, mate, if you go into
yeah, this is just about the experience it. And that plays itself perfectly into recruitment. And I think what we've noticed here is we're all different. Even if we have the same neurodiverse condition, we ain't in the box because we could have multiple things or different versions of it. So we know we need to be agile and nimble as people, but also as organizations, on how we portray and how we show our jobs and our opportunities within our organizations. Yes, of course, I'm going to say one little bit of that is the Recite Me toolbar and giving that power back to the user. But there's so many other things that we'll speak about around language, layout, different ways of applying, et cetera, et cetera. You guys will know more than me for sure. But it's all about sort of that equality and understanding what someone needs to be able to show the most important thing, which is their true talent. That's what we want here. Everyone's different. We have quiet people, we have loud people, we have people that's really outgoing, someone's reserved. When it comes to work and business and the role, the number one thing is, can that person do the role, and can we help them get the best out of them to achieve for themselves, but also as a collective for the organization. And I think that's how it does it. And what Ross has done, if we're in Recite Me, is taking on board all these key things. So people with neurodiverse conditions do work at Recite Me. And yes, it does help develop the organization. Like myself, we can speak passionately, confidently, and with knowledge and understanding from the help of the people. And over time has improved, obviously, our messaging, our product, our communications, our understanding, to be able to hopefully help other people as well online.
Thank you very much, Michael. Beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing with your story, and certainly Ross's. I think the key takeaway for me is everyone who experiences disability experiences it differently, and a blanket cookie cutter approach just doesn't work. It's not good enough in this day and age. And when you've got organizations like Be Radical, Recite Me, and others who have people with lived experience delivering and available as resources, there's just no excuse, no good excuse not to engage us. Scope published some research not long ago that confirmed only 20% of disabled job seekers believe that they will find an accessible job posting. And by making your process accessible and welcoming, you can tap into this diverse pool of talent. From a business case, diversity has been proven many times and for a long time. McKinsey & Co. have produced data that confirms that companies with diverse workforces are 35% more likely to outperform their less diverse counterparts in terms of financial returns. And according to Burson by Deloitte, inclusive companies are 1.7 times more likely to be innovative leaders in their market. So the business case is clear. We're still not sure why organizations aren't leading with this, though. Businesses often tell us at Radical that disabled folk don't apply to their jobs. What would you say to businesses like these? Holly, I'm going to start with you, and maybe you can talk about the engagement package piece as well.
Yeah, so Maria touched on this very briefly, I think, when she mentioned the fact that part of the reason she trusts working with us is because she knows that we will only work with organizations who we have done the work with, that we have vetted, that we have ensured, you know, are doing what they say they will do. And I think that is one of the key things, is that organizations, okay, they might not be getting applications from candidates who are disabled. However, I would suggest that they probably are. It's just that either they don't know because those candidates are not feeling confident and comfortable enough to be able to disclose that, or the way that they're advertising their jobs, or where they're advertising their jobs, or the partners that they're working with do not actively contribute to their image or their reputation as an employer who has a good track record with supporting disabled candidates through their processes, and then once they're in the jobs. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a lady who had a fantastic career history. She'd worked for Bumble, just as one organization, but a whole heap of like really well-known organizations as a customer experience manager. And she applied to a role with a business. We had talked a lot about reasonable adjustments, and she applied to a role with a business, and the business were really keen on her. She'd been given an interview day. They emailed her to say, if you have any reasonable adjustments, please let us know. And she then came to me. She was like, how do I approach this? You know, what are we doing in terms of like, who do we speak to? How do I phrase it? We put together an email. She responded, letting them know. And then they called her and they said to her, oh, you know, we're not actually sure that your, I know it was a language skill, your language skill is up to speed, and, you know, we might not be progressing with, you know, the interview on this basis. And it was all of a sudden, because she'd requested a reasonable adjustment. And to offer some context, she was a Mandarin, Italian, and English speaking customer success manager. And the advert had specifically asked for somebody who spoke Italian, Mandarin, and English. I don't know if we need to do any research on this for anyone to conclude that it's quite difficult to find somebody that speaks Mandarin, Italian, and English.
Unicorn.
Yeah, but for them to then turn around at that point and be like, oh, you know, we're not really sure that your language skills are where they need to be, or whatever it was. So the point on that is, she had taken the leap to request reasonable adjustments, which she hadn't done before, and was met with such hostility and uncertainty that I don't know if she will ever request reasonable adjustments again. So you've got one business there that has now ruined this process, not just for a candidate, but also for other organizations moving forwards. And so when we work with businesses, one of the pulls for candidates is that they know that we will only be working with organizations that are actively doing the work and that are going to offer that support and honor those reasonable adjustment requests during the process. People are applying for your jobs. Disabled people are applying for your jobs. And if they're not, it is because you may be working with agencies who have previously not treated them very well. You may be advertising your jobs in a way that gives a blanket EDI statement, and disabled candidates know better than to trust those. It may well be that you are eliminating the opportunity for people to apply for your jobs because you are unnecessarily asking for them to come into the office when the job doesn't require it. There's a whole heap of reasons why either they're not applying for your jobs or you don't know that they are applying for your jobs. And there's lots of ways to ensure that you know, you can reach those talent pools that otherwise you may be overlooking. What I would say on this particular example with the lady I was supporting was that I think the issue there was a lack of training. I think the issue was that the person on the other end of the email, the person on the other end of the phone had not had adequate training to understand that a reasonable adjustment for somebody who is neurodivergent and she has a dual diagnosis of ADHD and autism, a reasonable adjustment is, I would like the interview questions in advance. And if you do not have the relevant training and experience to navigate a reasonable adjustments request for different groups of people, you are going to think it's unreasonable because you've never had the direct experience yourself, and you may never have had that type of request before. But I think training is a really, really big thing here. Your teams have got to be trained on all things accessibility, reasonable adjustments, and everything in between to ensure that those jobs are accessible for people with a disability.
Yeah, I think loads of really good points. I would add to that you also need a policy, a reasonable adjustments policy, and reasonable adjustments should feature in your standard operating processes, and they should be updated really regularly, and they should form the basis for any training or learning program that you do offer the hiring community. And I think there's also a consideration around people's confidence. There's this misplaced fear around litigation. And I think that organizations really need to empower their teams to approach these conversations with empathy, and having the backup of a really robust policy that was written through the lens of a disabled person, so that your hiring community have not only got the permission to make the otherwise risky hire, but are empowered and able to do that in a way that is respectful and offers disabled folk the dignity that they deserve in your recruitment process. I'm going to move on to the next question, otherwise we're never going to get through the list. In the UK, businesses that invest in disability inclusion often see improved employee retention rates, according to the Department for Work and Pensions, and also the UK and Disability Rights UK. What is the business case for a thorough review of an end-to-end process? And will this mean that businesses no longer have to accommodate individual needs? I'm going to throw that to Maddie, please.
Yeah, so the business case is interesting, isn't it? Because there's like an ethical business case and there's an unethical business case. And a lot, and historically, I've seen loads of sort of, we're going to do a thorough review, we're going to implement all of these things because I want to hire an autistic person because they're really creative and they're going to churn out loads of ideas 24/7 and they're going to hit all our targets. It's such an exploitative take. And also you're putting this ridiculous level of pressure and expectation on somebody with a disability to perform and solve all your problems for you. It just doesn't work. And so you have this sort of, on one hand, people come up with a business case that's very unethical and we absolutely should not be doing that. And then on the other side, you've got a genuine business case, which is touching on some of the things that you said earlier. If you are hiring from, you have first and foremost, you've got approximately 25% of people identified as disabled in 2022. And so you've got a massive talent pool of people who would do fantastic work in your organisation. And if you're not accommodating to them, you're missing out on 25% of the population and what they can bring to the table. And exactly as Maria said, she's got some fantastic strengths, as we all disabled people have strengths that they can bring to an organisation in exactly the same way as non-disabled people do. And so to omit them from a recruitment process is sort of really quite a narrow-minded take. You've also got, touching back on what you said about those reports, diverse companies do really well, 35% more profit. But there's two reasons as to why that happens. One, you have the business case that having a diverse decision-making team creates a product that is far more likely to cater to the majority of the population. You're far more likely to build up more revenue. But the key there is not having a diverse candidate, which is not a thing. You can't have a diverse person. You can only have a diverse team, and it has to be a diverse team. There was a really interesting case where they had a group of people that were going through and labeling photos for an online photo sort of stock where you could download images. Everyone on that team was white, able-bodied, had no disabilities. And so when they labelled all of the photos, any image of somebody that wasn't white was labelled a black person, an Asian person. Whereas everyone who was white was labelled a doctor, a teacher, an office worker. And you had a huge issue where, because they didn't have people that had lived experience, they weren't labelling images of disabled people appropriately. They might just label them disabled person. And they also are not thinking outside of their own experience of how on earth they would feel if people were just putting them in a box and dismissing the entire facet of their own humanity. And then finally, so I'm aware I'm sort of going through quite a few lists here, But there is also the element of looking at why the companies that have diverse teams are being successful. It isn't just down to the fact that they have diverse people on their team, but it's also down to the fact that they are genuinely empowering their people to do really fantastic things. And so you're coming away from this notion of exclusive benefits. And there should absolutely, as we've touched on with equity, you need to be making sure that people are able to do their job and able to function and empower them to do wonderful work. If you are approaching that from the perspective of we are all individual, we all have our individual needs, and I would like to accommodate and centre that person that I am employing at the heart of what looks good for them, you are going to benefit the entire organisation. There is a difference between neurodiversity and neurodisability, for example. And so everyone who falls under neurodisability, they are neurodivergent, but you might have people that don't technically have a disability or are awaiting a diagnosis. They're on really long waiting lists, but they are identifying as neurodivergent. And if you are catering to all of these people with disabilities by focusing on that individual need, you're catering to those people with neurodiversity as well. And you're also catering to people who would never get diagnosed with a disability, but they also just need a bit of extra support somewhere.
Yeah, certainly. I think again, loads of great points. I want to reflect on an experience we had. We worked very closely with one of our star top clients, Cushman & Wakefield, to look at their
Oh, Emma, can you hear us?
I wondered if it was me. She's frozen, hasn't she?
Yeah. I'm wondering if she's lost the charger. Holly, do you know the story she was going to tell?
No, but actually, I was just going to come back, and I'll say this, Maddie, while she's off. It's really interesting what you say about those people who are on waiting lists or who won't ever get a diagnosis or haven't yet got a diagnosis. Because I was speaking to, had a sort of an intro conversation with a potential client the other day, and the HR lady there said to me, the people that you're supporting that are neurodivergent, how do you get them to prove that? How do you get them to show you that?
That's
and
challenging.
her point was, she had a son who had a dual diagnosis of autism and ADHD, and she was like, I see all of the support that he needs. She was like, but nowadays so many people identify as having a disability or being neurodivergent. And I said to her, look, we are not going to ask anyone to give us a piece of paper that shows a diagnosis. We're not going to ask anybody to go through a process of displaying to us that they are neurodivergent, that they have ADHD, autism, that they are dyslexic or dyspraxic. If somebody comes to us and says, I am dyslexic, or somebody comes to us and says, I am autistic, we will represent them on the basis that they will need reasonable adjustments that they tell us they need, off the back of either a diagnosis or a self-diagnosis or no diagnosis at all. Because you cannot hold somebody to a diagnosis when we are in a situation right now where those waiting lists are 2 years plus. I waited 4.5 years to get a diagnosis for my son. And if at every single stage we had just pretended that he didn't have ADHD because we didn't have a piece of paper yet, I mean, God knows where we would have been. So it's really interesting that you mentioned about the fact that, not everybody is necessarily going to be, diagnosed, or not everybody is going to have a disability, but some people are going to require those adjustments anyway. And from a personal perspective, I don't have a diagnosis of any type. I may or may not be neurodivergent in some way. But Emma and Kirsty are acutely aware that there are a lot of things that I need personally that I've never been comfortable to ask for in other organizations, but that I really struggle with. I see myself as fairly intelligent, but if you put a spreadsheet in front of me, I will not process the information. I can't. I also cannot spend long periods of time in meetings, because regardless of how much I desperately want to be engaged, at about 45 minutes, you have lost me and you are not getting me back. And I'm like a child in a meeting room. Like I'm like constantly looking for something to do, or rocking backwards and forwards, or playing with paper. So, you know, there's lots of things that people who are not necessarily diagnosed or, you know, don't have a recognized neurodivergent condition. There's a lot of things that we might just need because all of our brains work differently. You know, we might not fit in one of these boxes, but and so just my point there was it's really important that we don't make people put themselves in a box in order to be able to request those adjustments. You don't have to have a diagnosis to come forward and say, I need some kind of assessment. I would like an assessment because I think X, Y, and Z would help me. Because I think a lot of the time we're like, oh, it's just for people with a disability, or it's just for people that have got a diagnosis, and that's not the case.
Can I just backtrack slightly as well? Because I've been trying to wait to raise this point, and it's really important. So most people will know that I'm registered blind, and one of the real issues that blind and partially sighted people have is access to information. So searching for a job is a real issue. You come up with lots of barriers. I mean, you know, you've got to have accessibility tools to search the internet. Lots of websites aren't accessible. So trying to find the job advert in the first place is just a nightmare. And then job application forms aren't often accessible. ATS systems aren't often accessible. So, you know, Recite Me, it sounds like a great tool. But I just think in terms of if you're a recruiter and you're trying to search for disabled people, I found 60% of the jobs that I actually applied for were through like programs or recruitment consultancies such as Radical Recruit, whereby I know, as Maria said, they can sift the job adverts for me, and that I can just rely on them to send me jobs that I can have access to. Because it's really difficult out there to try and find just a job advert, I think, when you've got that visual impairment.
Certainly. Thanks very much. My Wi-Fi is presenting as a challenge. It's always me who has to struggle with tech. I tell you what, it's always on these calls. Holly, I've dropped the questions that are left in case I do drop out again to your email. So please carry on without me if I drop out again. Thank you everyone for your patience. So where are we at? We've got, so we're talking about consultancy services and the opportunities for businesses to take some really positive action that would result in them really leveling the playing field, not only for disabled folk, but probably for any person who is considering applying to their jobs, because often the changes we make as a result of these consultancy projects have global application, and reasonable adjustments tend to benefit everyone. You know, there's a lot of organizations talking about the fact that, you know, diversity is atop of their agenda, but disability rarely features in the conversation about diversity, which really bugs me, having worked with two women, one diagnosed, the other not, who are literally powerhouses and bring so much to our business, and who without them, you know, we just wouldn't exist. So I know personally the value of having disabled colleagues and the rich experience and skill set they bring. What can we do to drive change forward and create more opportunities for disabled people to access employment? Ross, I'm going to give you the microphone because it's all been the women talking recently. Over to you.
Do you mean Michael?
Sorry, I've got voice in my head. Oh, apologies. It's been a terrible session. Don't let me facilitate again. Michael, please talk to me and forgive me.
Yeah, sorry. We'd be able just to shorten that to the question. Sorry, it was a long.
Yeah, sorry, it's because I waffle, mate. Yeah, apologies. Okay, what can organizations do to drive change forward and create more opportunities for disabled folk to access employment? Your top tips.
Top tips. Well, come from marketing. it has to be the shop window and how you portray yourself, I think. It has to be an organization that's with arms open. I think we have to understand that we mentioned about diverse groups of people driving better outcomes. And we also mentioned about how we should be looking at the skill set and the end goal and what someone can achieve. So I think we need to try and use these key things to show in our shop window and our job adverts and the way we portray ourselves as a business, that we want to look for the best people for the right roles and embrace everyone's diversity and everyone's differences. So I think from our careers websites to the way we frame things, I think wording is very important. It can be a sticky subject when someone's trying to do well, but they might not say the right thing, but we need to be able to do that. So I think doing that is important from a branding perspective, and then options. We mentioned when Kirsty was talking about online applications for people that are blind. I tried to reach out to organizations to see how we can improve our toolbar to help people who are blind. And I understand it's something that's very difficult online, but we have to be able to, with technology and with people's efforts, we need to come together to understand how we can do better. But at the same time, it's also down to experience again. So if you shorten the steps, making something less complicated, think about it on clicking and labeling of navigation and buttons to get someone through a stage of a website. Someone who is blind or not blind, or someone who's neurodivergent who isn't, as long as the experience and the process is simplified, it's going to be easy for everyone. So I could imagine the way a website's built and the way the UX and the UI, that's also important of how we can attract. So if someone comes on the website and naturally is comfortable with using it and finds it easier, subconsciously, this brand is right, or this organization is right for me because I'm comfortable straight away. So usability, branding, and sort of doing the right thing, being that nice person and putting that over as a brand and an experience will go a long way for organizations.
Yeah, I think all really good points. Holly, I'm going to throw to you, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on the work we did with Joseph Rowntree in terms of engaging with candidates who have seen the ad and thought, yeah, great, I can see myself in this organization, and the next part of the process around designing recruitment campaigns that work for everyone. Can you just very quickly reflect on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do, I think, incredibly well here, just to let everybody know, is we work with organizations to have a look at the spec and the advert that they already have and work out where is it that this is going to fall short if we are trying to actively attract a really diverse group of candidates. Where do we need to put that advert in order for it to reach the right people? And then how do we encourage those people and fill those people with confidence so that by the time it gets to the application process, they don't self-select out? So with Joseph Rowntree, there's sort of three parts of the outreach initially. One is to have dual branded advertising across social media. What that does is it affiliates any brand that we work with us, and really shows that almost that radical commitment to hiring in a certain way. The second is outreach to our referral partners. So we have a list of referral partners, about 2,000 contacts across the UK, who are various organizations. They might be women's refuges, they might be job centres, they might be youth organisations, community groups, prison service, probation service, any one of a number of organisations. And we do outreach to those organisations and let them know about the role so that they can start getting people to refer themselves into us for the role. And then the final part is obviously to our existing database that we have a really good relationship and reputation with. Off the back of that, we run an engagement session, online engagement session. So it's a webinar, a bit like this, where myself or Emma or Kirsty will have a conversation directly with the hiring manager or the HR team ask questions around the job, the organization, and what is actually going to be required of this person. Give people the chance to ask those questions themselves as well, and really start to connect those candidate pools with the role and with the company. And then from there, we support people with their applications. So we try and tick off all of the questions that they might have. We try and take away any of the opportunities that would usually present themselves that would force someone to pull themselves out of a process. And we will support them with their CV. We will support them with their cover letter, with their application. And then we will also support them through the process. So if they get an interview prep, if they want to have a conversation around reasonable adjustments, we will support with that as well. And what that means is we are not hand holding, but we are really wrapping someone into in support until they get the job. So we are giving them all the things that they should have had they've had all the privilege that everyone else that is not getting that support had, and getting them to a point where actually all of their skills and experience, like Maria said, you know, aside from the sort of things that companies see as detrimental or a pain or whatever else it might be, their skills and experience demonstrate that they are the right candidate for the job. And actually the learnings and the feedback that we received following the Joseph Rowntree campaign was that, you know, 19 out of 20 of the candidates that we supported would have not applied for that job had it not have, one, been through us, because they knew that that brand affiliation meant that Joseph Rowntree had done the work and were actually doing what they said they would do. But two, would not have applied had they not have had that additional support around application, CV, interview prep, and then that conversation, that facilitation around the conversation of reasonable adjustments. So we are doing what the job centre is supposed to do, but we are doing it with a commercial head on from a group of people that know recruitment. I've been a corporate recruiter for about 12 years now. It makes me feel a bit sick. So we understand how businesses work. This is not a case of, oh, you know, congratulations on the fact that you've got 10 years working in corporate finance. You happen to have a disability, so we have a lovely customer service job that you might want to do. We are not about that here. We're about making sure that all of your skills and experience are at the forefront of your application, and that actually the bit that sometimes you're missing, which is the confidence, which has been probably dragged down through all of the government processes that you've been pushed through, and, you know, whatever it is, that you know, we're ultimately getting you a job or getting a candidate a job that they are qualified and, you know, experienced enough to do. So yeah, I've probably talked on that a little bit too long, but that's the engagement package. And we know that that means that ultimately at the end of this process, the people that get the jobs are the ones that would have usually self-selected out far earlier on.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Very good. Thank you. So I want you to talk a little bit about our AA offer, Kirsty. We'll provide, so in terms of this reasonable adjustments process, a candidate will be assessed, their needs in mind, a list of reasonable adjustments will be devised and provided to them in the form of a report. And then that report is usually made available by the recruit or colleague within a business to their management team. Given the conversation today, like, how valuable is this service and what difference could it make in the lives of, I want to talk about the disabled people, but also their managers, and perhaps from an organisational perspective. Can you just touch on those 3 points before we go to the final question?
Yeah, I think it makes an enormous difference. So with access to work, at the point they agree the funding, basically the employers by themselves to figure it out. And this, I think this is where it just goes horribly wrong. So, you know, from the point that person gets their reports, we'll then book in a follow-up conversation with everybody involved in implementing those reasonable adjustments, so that we can make sure that everybody has a responsibility and knows their responsibility and feels supported in the process. Because I think traditionally what people managers are scared that they may not have worked with somebody who has a disability before. The whole organization may not have had a disabled employee before, and often I think people are really frightened to admit, I don't know what I'm doing here, I need some help. And we're there to offer that help. That's what we do. That's what our experts are there to do and provide. And it just means, I think, that the disabled person has a chance to ask questions, has a chance to understand the equipment, is supported through the process. I think we heard Pranavan yesterday or Monday saying, is literally left to me as a disabled person to organise all my support and equipment. That's not good. So yeah, I think it brings the service brings everybody together. Everybody's clear on their responsibilities. Everybody can reach out and ask questions without fear of thinking, oh, I look bad, I don't know what I'm doing. And then, the whole organisation benefits really, because you've got a brand new recruit that knows exactly what they're doing, has got the equipment and support in place and can thrive in the workplace. And very often, once you've got that process right and you do that piece of work to get it right, then you're going to attract more disabled people within your business, more disabled talent. And I just think it's a great service. And I'm not just saying that from a business perspective, I'm saying that from a disabled person's perspective, because I've been through that access to work process, and it was long and it was painful. And our service aims to remove that pain.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Now, I've got a couple of questions from our lovely audience, not many, which I take to mean that we've covered a lot of ground and there are very few gaps in the information we've provided. Kath Bull, who's a friend of Radical, has asked, how can employers make application forms and job adverts more encouraging for people with disabilities to apply? Ross, I'd like your top tip, please, followed by Holly's top tip, please.
Michael, not Ross.
Oh, bloody hell, why am I doing this? I'm so sorry. Michael. I haven't even met Ross. I met you twice now. My gosh. Oh, people are laughing at me. I'm definitely not with me. I owe you 2 beers, mate. Michael.
Well, it's okay, Maria. I mean, yes. What can make applications more encouraging for people with disabilities? I think some sort of introduction or the section. Well, this probably isn't like a normal thing. It's just me talking now. I've listened to everyone. I think we need to start the conversation for someone who's going to come and apply for a job. So having something on the on that job description or on the web page around about having an open conversation around about someone's disability or someone's reasonable adjustments that can reassure someone that's going to come and apply for a job, and not just have the generic one-liner like you guys were saying before, but really mean it in the job description of where, we're looking for the best talent and this can come from a Mary background. We're very open to X, Y, and Z and reasonable adjustments, and putting that in black and white at the front of the job description.
Yeah, we say that often to our clients. We say, just use really simple, plain language that is intentional. So we suggest, if they're looking to recruit from the disabled community, that they include a line. If you are disabled and you meet the requirements of the job, we want to hear from you. We'd also like to know how best to support you through the provision of reasonable adjustments. From the moment we start this process, you can contact this person who is disability aware and would love to learn more about what we can do to support you in this, whatever. That is it's power, isn't it? This whole, we encourage applications from all sections of the community. What on earth does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Really
invest in the right people, Emma, who can tell you how to do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. And Holly, what would be your top tip, please?
I think in terms of the advert, just language. So, you know, we have become obsessed with creativity, which is great. I don't want to dull anyone's creativity, but stop putting in your adverts that you're looking for, you know, a number crunching, VLOOKUP whizzing, Excel loving, unicorn donkey dropping guru who can do pivot table presentations for your powerhouse team or whatever else it is. Like, if you have autism and you read that, you are going to have an aneurysm, okay? Just tell them what the job is. Tell them what the job is, what you want them to do, what the benefit is of them doing the job. The amount of time we spend speaking to organizations about their adverts and how awful they are. And I love job adverts. I have an unhealthy obsession with writing good job adverts because I have seen the impact of getting them right. But the downside to loving job adverts is that the pure hatred you feel towards anyone that gets them wrong is burning. So yeah, it's making sure that your language is clear and concise, that you are just telling people this is the job, this is the reason the job's come up, this is what you're going to be doing, this is the benefit of the job, here's the process, this is what it's paying, this is the hours, this is where you'll be working, and if you need any help, this is where we are. Because otherwise you are turning people off from the beginning. There is a time and place for exciting language. It's in a year 11 GCSE English language creative writing essay. It is not in a job advert.
Beautiful. So I think I'm not sure whether it's a healthy amount of rage or not, but spoken with such conviction, regardless of where it came from. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left on the call. Thank you for staying with us, everyone. Maddie, the final question for the panel, I'm going to get you to kick it off. What call to action are you issuing the people in the room and those who are going to watch it back later on with a cuppa and a sarnie, that would make their processes more accessible and welcoming to disabled candidates or humans?
So I think my answer to this is, I say this all the time, but it's to do with communication and proactive communication. It's making sure that you're keeping the person that you're talking to at the center of everything that you're doing, making your staff at the center of everything that you're doing. There is this overwhelming urge as humans to desperately seek out ways to identify with somebody else. And sometimes it can be counterintuitive to try and do that. And it's really powerful to actually understand that you might not understand someone else's reality. Even if, as we've mentioned before, you share the same diagnosis as somebody, the experiences can be completely and utterly different. The best thing that you can do to accommodate disabilities and welcome disabilities into a workplace is to focus on centering every single person in your organization as what they need as being valid, and proactively offering accommodations. So when that is during the recruitment process, instead of just saying what accommodations could you offer, you can say, here are some of the accommodations that we offer. This won't cover what everybody needs. If you need something else, or sending a simple line to say, if you would like the questions in advance of the interview, let us know, and our disability aware person here will support you. Or anything that is proactive, that's basically saying, I'm looking at you, I can see you, we're here to help you, and we're happy to help you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Fab. Maria, call to action?
I would say this is going to sound a bit strange. So I did some coaching recently, first time in my life. And the strangest thing that I heard, but it was also very useful, was on the side of a person with a disability is do it scared, do it messy, but do it anyway. So sometimes we come in scared when we look at an application and we just walk off, whereas maybe someone who's able-bodied will look at something and say, yeah, I've got the confidence to do that, it's fine. So I would say for people in this call who also have disabilities, do it scared, do it messy, but do it anyway, because at the end of the day, you never know what might happen with that company. When it comes to a call to action for companies themselves, again, it's a coaching thing that I heard. It was at the beginning of this month. Is if you want to get somewhere fast, and this is the accelerating access program, right? Go to the people who know the best. Invest, because at the end of the day, that little amount of investment that you're going to give is going to save you a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money in the long term. And at the end of the day, 25% of the population having a disability is a huge amount of population to be missing out. And it's just detrimental to you. I mean, we keep on blowing that horn over and over again, but it's for a good reason, because at the end of the day, you need to invest in your company for the future of your company, by finding the people who know how to do it as fast as possible, as easy as possible, as painless as possible, so that you can be one of the top companies. And I mentioned it before, where if you want to flash a light and say, we are there for you, you've got to do it with the right people. And, you know, if you don't know the words to write in an application, that's the bottom bit that says, you know, we are disability friendly, but if you want to see examples of how we can support you, if you don't know how to write the right words for it, go to the people who know, who've done it, who've had the experience, who deal with people like me, who either have lived experiences or work with people who have lived experiences, because they're drowning in the experience. You don't need to stress extra for no reason. The people are there right in front of you.
We need to pay you something, because you could lead our PR campaigns and be the face of both the Radical brands. We just need to start paying you, I think. Thank you very much, Maria. You're a bloody brilliant human. We're a little bit over time, but I'm determined to finish this panel around Robin. Michael, not Ross, Michael, almost.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think it's touched on before from Holly, but the actionable point as well is probably around the wording of adverts. Does exactly what it says in the tin is a good starting point. So we strip back all the complicated language from an advert, and we bullet point things of what these jobs are going to be like and what they're going to bring to the company and why we're doing it. I think less is more, and we go back to reading ages, especially in the UK. Average reading age is 9, I believe, maybe 8 or 9. So what we do at Recite, obviously everyone's using AI these days, so we put a lot of our blogs through chat GPT to ask the reading age, and we make sure that reading ages of what we're doing, there's other technologies available, we make sure that we strip out the complexity, because we just need everyone just wants to get straight to the point. No one's got time these days, and to cut through all the noise, you need to be precise and accurate. So I think that should come along in job descriptions, which will help people with neurodiverse conditions also.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I'm going to end this call on behalf of Holly and Kirsty and the whole Be Radical team with a big thanks and round of applause for our wonderful panelists, Maddie, Maria, and Michael. Ross, if you're watching this back, you're here in my head clearly, and we hope that you recover from the dreaded lurgy pretty soon. We will, we'd also like to extend our thanks to our wonderful delegates. Thank you for your commitment and your allyship. We hope that this has given you what it is you need to go back and be better allies to your disabled colleagues, and also perhaps remove some barriers and blockers within your organisations that are keeping disabled folk on the outskirts or the fringes of your recruitment processes, and certainly out of your organisations. We will follow up with an email so you can link with our wonderful panelists and access the playback link in case you want to re-watch any of the conversation today, and along with some information about our services at Be Radical. It is almost 5 o'clock on Friday, so have a wonderful day, what's left of it. Make sure you're kind to each other and kind to yourselves. Take it easy. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.